Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to talk about the Stormbringer subscription box. I've got some new ones that I want to do an unboxing for, but I'm also going to talk about the Combat Patrol subscription that just started shipping here in the US recently. And I've got some notes down here that I'm going to be referring to, so to give you some values and that sort of thing. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, we're going to dive right in with the unboxing portion of the video. So the Stormbringer set came out, and the first of them that we'll talk about here is issue number 62, and it's basically is two paints. You get White Scar and Cyberite Green, both layer paints, and the magazine talks about that sort of thing in here. So this is normally $14 according to this, but if you're buying the premium service, it's actually $16.99. So if you just got this magazine, it would probably not necessarily be worth it. Obviously, these two paints are worth about $10 total. So not your best value. But maybe if you want to read about their ideas on how to use the paints, it could help out in that way. The second one we'll discuss here is issue number 59. I'm going to do these in whatever order I grab them in. And in this one, we're going to get Grundstock Thunderers. And it's a sprue of multiple characters. And in this, we've got, it'll be about, $17 for this magazine. But this unit is $58 according to the Warhammer side. So this one would actually be a pretty darn good deal because for $17, you're getting a $60 set. And then finally, the last two are the same character in two parts. So issues 60 and 61 are Ale Guzzler Gargants, this big giant dude. Now, if you buy him through the Warhammer site, he is $75. So for $34, you get half off for this character. And here's the other magazine. No, let me get it without glare. There we go. A little better. So not terrible all around. Pretty good deal. Let's just take one moment here. So this time around, you're spending around $67, $68, and you are getting $143 worth of stuff. So a pretty good deal for this time around, but only if you are doing anything with these particular armies. For example, this the Thunderers, I have no use for them whatsoever. In fact, I'll probably turn around and sell them. And same with Ale Guzzler. I don't really have any reason to have that character. And, you know, those two paints, I would never have bought the magazine just for those. I already have them anyway. So for me, this particular subscription box set didn't really do much for me. But if you are a reseller doing things through eBay, this is a great deal. If you just happen to need these models, also a great deal. And occasionally they do put things out in these sets that is no longer available. And in those cases, it's very much worth it. So that's the unboxing of the Stormbringer part of the video. The next thing I really want to talk about is the Combat Patrol that they came out with. Now, I did do an unboxing for the first two magazines that came out for that. And then about a week later, after doing some soul searching, I did cancel the subscription before it went on. And I did it for a lot of reasons. But let's start with the premium stuff. What do you get if you pay the extra money for Combat Patrol? Well, you get a Hive Tyrant. That's the first thing. And while that is pretty awesome, and it is worth $50, I already had one, so I don't need another one. I don't personally. Maybe somebody needs a whole bunch of them. You can build variants and such, but for me, one Hive Tyrant was enough. Then there's the Brutalis Dreadnought. That's a $65 value. I have 4 Dreadnoughts, so I'm kind of good on those. You get a Demon Prince for $85. Now, while I would have loved him just to build him and paint him, I'm actually not playing Chaos, so the Demon Prince would have been kind of a frivolous choice. I'd still love to have one, but not at the expense of having to basically get 80 issues, because he wasn't like going to come soon. He was going to come way down the line. I mean, I've been doing Stormbringer for over a year, and I'm only just getting close to the end of getting all of the stuff. There's 80 different issues, and I'm just now up to 62. So I would have been getting him for a while. Then there's the Howling Banshees. Those are $62 of value. You can get the Brokir Thunderkin, so Leagues of Votann characters. I'm not playing Leagues of Votann. Some Killicans. Well, we have Killicans. They're $62 here. I already have them. My wife is playing orcs, so we have pretty much every orc unit that you can get that's at least remotely modern. You can get a Brood Coven for $63. And then finally, you can get a Rogel Dorn tank for the Imperial Army. Now, that's $105 value. Now, I should point out that all of these things come with one of these magazines. So for $16.99, you're getting a $105 tank thrown in. You know, all of those are way worth it. And basically, you're going to get a grand total of about 50% off all the stuff you get in these subscription boxes. The problem that I see with them, and that was kind of true with the Stormbringer, although I'll explain why I feel it's a little different in a moment, is that you're going to get a whole lot of extra army stuff that you just don't technically need. And if you've come at this with a plan already, so for example, before I started Stormbringer, I had already pretty much committed to 40K. I was committed to doing the Sisters of Battle. We were going to do orcs, and then a few things slipped in. I really got excited about the Blood Angels, so I started a Blood Angels army. But for the most part, that was our plan. Then I got into the Stormbringer stuff because it just seemed like a fun thing to get in the mail. I didn't really know what we were going to get, so each time it was a special surprise. But then I looked ahead and I saw what was coming, and most of it's pretty cool. A few of the things are a little bit like they're just trying to get rid of them, like some of the war bands from Underworlds are in this set, and they're kind of, I won't necessarily say useless, but they are in a place where in some cases they don't even have rules right now for the new version. Not to say that people aren't still playing the old version, of course, but those are a little bit harder of a sell. I mean, I have a huge stack of these things. I'm not able to keep up with building them all either. Now, what it did do for me, though, which was really awesome, is that I was able to pretty much get a substantial Stormcast Eternals army, which I became quite excited about. And you also get a pretty decent Goblin army, too. Plenty of orcs, too. So we've got a pretty fair representation of characters, and even some rare models that were thrown in, characters that, you know, we're able to use for other things that were very neat. The Combat Patrol is really just that. It's not as much of this hodgepodge of stuff as it is pieces from Combat Patrols. So like my first issue, I got the Tyranid Prime and the Space Marine Captain and some Von Ryan Leapers, 6 dice and a battle mat. I mean, that's cool and all, but I already got all of that in one of the starter sets. There's a starter set where you get a bunch of Space Marines and a bunch of the Tyranid, and if you buy a single, I think it was a Librarian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was a Librarian. If you buy him separately, then with that pack and that character, you have 2 Combat Patrols, and you spend less than you would have spent on 1 Combat Patrol. And you get it all right up front. Whereas with this set, I basically got a winged Tyranid, a Space Marine Captain, and 3 Leapers. It would have taken like an hour and a half to build them all. You could then paint them, I guess, and keep up with it. But you couldn't actually play yet. Whereas with the Stormbringer, the first 2 bags came with a pretty reasonable amount of guys and enough to do a quick skirmish just so that you could start playing the game. So as far as it being like a brand new beginners type thing, like what I've said before about Stormbringer being perfect if you're new to the hobby, I don't feel the same way about the Combat Patrol. In fact, I think Combat Patrol is more designed just to get you a bunch of stuff. In fact, I think that the primary people who benefit from this would probably be people who are willing to sell all of these items online separately for a pretty reasonable price, because obviously if you just got this, you could get most of this stuff or you could just try and pick and choose, find a place to buy the magazines independently. Even for a few dollars more, you're going to save a lot of money. So just another thing that's kind of frustrating is that it pretty much takes you to get to like 12 or 13 of the magazines to get all of the stuff that you need to start playing, at least realistically. So you get 2 in the first one, and then you get 4 more. So now you're only halfway there to getting the rest of the stuff. By the end of issue 19, you pretty much have all the contents from the Space Marines and the Tyranid. But that's still, let's see, 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4, 5, like 6 shipments. So 6 months you'd have to wait before you'd have those 2 units. Now, again, price-wise, totally worth it because you're going to, not nearly spend as much as getting 2 at the same time. But as you go on, at 21 plus, you start getting some Eldar. And at 31 plus, you start getting some Chaos Space Marines. You're not really going to get enough of those to play appropriately. You're going to get a sizable amount of the things, but probably not enough to really have a lot of value. You're going to have to go outside and find more things. If you literally had nothing, then I guess it would definitely be something to consider. But the piecemeal nature of it and how long it takes, it's a really hard thing for me to recommend. Honestly, for me specifically, I already went crazy and got pretty much everything I personally need for a pretty reasonable army of Space Marines, Blood Angels that can swap things out if I need to. I'm not like forced to use every single thing I have. I could try and be a little bit more fluid with my loadout based on who I'm playing against. So doing this combat patrol wouldn't help me. I would just duplicate even further and have even more things that I didn't necessarily need. Like, you're not getting any of the specialized units like Sanguinary Guard or anything. You get some Terminators, you get some different intercessors, that kind of thing. But I mean, it's stuff that you could just go out and get a box of and be good with. As far as the Orcs are concerned, they just don't even have enough for those. Like, the Orcs are a horde army. You need a lot. I mean, the Green Tide really does rely on tons of boys. You're not going to get that many boys in this setup. It's better to just, if you were interested in the Orcs, to just go buy an Orc box. I guess I should say, I don't regret the Stormbringer one. There's a lot of really cool models. There's a lot of really neat terrain. I got a whole bunch of rare stuff in it. But Combat Patrol just doesn't feel quite as special to me. And I think I don't really want to harp on it too much, but I do feel like it was a less inspired subscription box. And all around, I wouldn't say it's completely pointless because, again, there are ways that you could use this to your advantage, especially, again, I know I've said it probably too many times this time, but I really want to drive the point home that if you were going to resell stuff, this would be a great freaking deal because I see tons of things getting parted out on eBay. In fact, I bought a Winged Tyranid Prime on eBay for like $16. Now, if you were to sell the Winged Tyranid Prime for this for $16, you just paid for the magazine and then you sell that captain for even $15 and you've just doubled the amount of money you spent. So that's not too bad. So I don't know. I mean, and I also have to admit this. The very first issue was worth well more than $100, and it only cost me $15 because I did get some pretty decent stuff. Did I need it? No, but I can't fault the fact that it was still a freaking great deal. And, maybe you just want to have a smattering of different things so that you can then decide what you'd like to play. Maybe you want to build a few and just see what it's like. Get some Eldar and go, wow, these models are actually really freaking cool. I guess I'll focus on them. It could definitely act as a entry into the hobby as far as I have no idea what I like, but I want to do it in a manner that is reasonable to access and doesn't overwhelm me all at once. Because that's another thing. When you go and decide to get into this and you have nothing at all, if you got a bad bit of advice and someone's like, you need to buy a Battle Force box, that might be a little much. To suddenly be faced with building 30 models when you've never built one. When I first did this, I went into a Warhammer store, and the guy there basically gave me a box of 10 models and the starter kit for the paint and the starter kit for the tools, gave me some advice on ways to do things very cheap. Like, he didn't hand me the palette paper that they have from Games Workshop. He was like, go to Michael's and buy one of those little plastic palettes for like $1. He was really giving me ideas on how to do this on the cheap so that I wasn't financially overwhelmed, and I had an opportunity to really dive in at a pace that made sense for a rank beginner. And then after I'd done it a couple times, after I built a few models and I was like, okay, this is for me, this is really cool, then I went out and I bought more. I got a combat patrol for the Sisters of Battle, and I got, an orc combat patrol, and I just grew it until you've seen it behind me before, just an outrageous number of things. So it's important to start at a place that is accessible to you, whatever that means. And Combat Patrol and Stormbringer both offer that, providing that you actually act on them quickly. Because if you wait several months and just allow them to keep pouring in, then you will end up feeling overwhelmed pretty fast. Because the pile of Stormbringer stuff I have that I haven't even opened is really intense. In fact, there was a model I really wanted because of a White Dwarf magazine I read. And I was about to go on eBay and buy him. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. This is an Age of Sigmar character. What if he just happens to be in an upcoming Stormbringer box? So I checked, and sure enough, I already actually had him. It's just important to make sure that you actually pay attention to what you've got, go through it, make sure you understand that you are getting this stuff, prioritize it. Otherwise, you might just get to the point where you're like, wow, that's just a massive pile that I will never, ever go through, and this was a huge mistake. I've almost felt that way a couple times with it, but it has been fun to occasionally go through them. And in actuality, it's pretty funny because I missed an entire shipment, and it had a premium character in it. It had a big-ass dragon. It's like a $130 model, and I missed that whole shipment. And I happened to be going through it to find the model I was talking about earlier, and I noticed that I was missing that set. I was able to call them. They sent it back out to me without any question. So pretty awesome all around how they act. Right there, the customer service makes it pretty worth it, even if the Combat Patrol set may not be as good in my opinion. But anyway, that's enough about that. Do you have the Combat Patrol subscription, or are you doing Stormbringer? What do you think of these kinds of things? Are they cool? Are they just a little too scattered in your opinion? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll talk again next time. This is Robert with Society of Games Files, signing off.